They say love is blind, but I learnt it's often a blindfold you willingly tie when lust whispers promises of paradise. I chased a dream in the Philippines, a dream that turned into a nightmare of empty pockets and a hollowed-out soul. If you've ever had a confused desire for true connection, or found yourself lost in a foreign land searching for something you couldn't find within, then this story is for you. If you like our videos, please subscribe and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. I remember the feeling, that warm, fuzzy glow. It was at the Sunset Dive, just a few weeks after I retired, after I landed in Angeles City. The noise of the bar was a hum, not a distraction. I saw her across the room, Maya. Her smile caught me, pulled me in. My heart, which I thought was long dead from years in Los Angeles, from that cold silence of my big empty house, felt a spark. I thought, this is it, this is why I came here. I walked over, my steps feeling lighter than they had in years. Mind if I join you? I asked, a little nervous. She looked up, her eyes bright. Of course not, sir. Please. Her voice was soft, like a melody. We talked for hours. I told her about leaving the States, how I was tired of the rat race, the loneliness. She listened, really listened. It must be hard, she said, her voice full of understanding. Starting over, so far from home? I felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in a long time. My walls, built up over decades, just crumbled. I felt hopeful, naively hopeful, looking back. She told me about her life, about her family, but not in a way that felt like asking for anything. Just stories about how she loved to sing, how she dreamed of opening a small shop. I found myself picturing our future, a peaceful life here in the sun. With her by my side, my mind was already fast-forwarding, past the introductions, past the awkward first dates. I was already in love with the idea of her, with the possibilities she represented. My heart was wide open, ready to believe. You look like a good man, she told me, her hand briefly touching my arm. That simple touch sent a jolt through me. A good man. I hadn't heard that in years. All my worries, all my cynicism, they just melted away. I truly believed in that moment that she was different. I told myself, this is a second chance. This is what I came here for. I felt like I was finally where I was supposed to be. My whole retirement, my move, it all seemed to be leading to this. I was ready to give her my whole heart, ready to start anew. My new life, my Philippine dream, felt so real, so tangible. I was floating. She made me feel like I mattered, like my existence had a purpose beyond just existing. I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a feeling I hadn't realized I'd been missing for so long. It was intoxicating. I couldn't imagine my life without her, not after that first night. I wanted to protect her, to provide for her, to make all her dreams come true. My new purpose had arrived. I remember telling her everything that night. My divorce, the kids who barely called, that hollow ache retirement brought. My house in LA, it felt like a tomb, I told her, my voice catching. She just nodded, her eyes never leaving mine. I understand, she whispered. Loneliness is a heavy burden. Her words wrapped around me like a warm blanket. She made me feel like I wasn't just rambling to a stranger. I was confessing to a kindred spirit. I came here for peace, I admitted, for a second chance at something. She smiled, a soft, genuine smile that reached her eyes. Maybe you found it, Papa. That's what she called me, Papa. It felt comforting, like I had a purpose again. I told her about the big house I'd sold, the money I had, my plans for a quiet life by the beach. She listened intently, never interrupting. My family, they are very poor, she said. Her very senior brother, he needs school. My heart went out to her. I thought, here's a woman with real burdens, real heart. I started spending every waking moment with her. We'd go to the local market, the air thick with the smell of spices and fresh fruit. This is how we live, Papa, she'd say, showing me how to pick the ripest mangoes. We'd sit at tiny eateries, sharing plates of adobo and rice. My favorite, she'd declare. Offering me a bite from her spoon, I found myself laughing more than I had in years. My world, which had felt so small and constricted, suddenly felt huge and vibrant, all because of her. I feel so happy with you, Papa, she'd often say, leaning her head on my shoulder as we watched the sunset over the ocean. My life is better now. Her words were like music to my ears. I felt a connection I hadn't felt since, well, I couldn't even remember. She made me feel young, wanted, like I finally belonged somewhere. My defenses were completely down. I didn't question anything. Why? I was living the dream. I was finally happy. I dismissed any tiny flicker of doubt, telling myself it was just old habits, old fears. This was real. This was different. I was sure of it. I'd found my place. My new life was with Mutya, here, in the sun. Then came the really big request. We were at the Golden Spoon, a quiet little place we often went for breakfast. Mutya was picking at her eggs, not meeting my eyes. "Papa," she started, her voice barely a whisper. "My brother, he has a chance, a fishing boat, but it's very expensive." My stomach clenched. I knew this was different. This wasn't a roof or medical bill. What a lot. "How?" I asked, my voice suddenly dry. She named a figure that made my jaw drop. Most of my savings. I just stared at her. My mind raced. That's a huge amount," I said, my voice tight. She looked up, her eyes wide, glistening. "Do you not trust me, Papa?" Her lower lip trembled just a bit. "My family's future, it depends on this. My brother, he is a good man. He will pay you back." My heart twisted. All the small worries I'd pushed down, they roared in my ears. But then I saw her face, so vulnerable. I couldn't say no. Not to her. Not when she looked at me like that. "Okay," I said, the word feeling heavy on my tongue. "Okay, Mutya, I'll do it." I saw the relief flood her face. She smiled, a dazzling, grateful smile, and squeezed my hand. "You are my angel, Papa, my hero." Those words, they were my enduring. I ignored the screaming alarm bells in my head. I walked to the bank later that day, my hands shaking as I initiated the transfer. It was done. All that money, gone. I tried to tell myself it was an investment in our future, in her happiness. The next day, Mutya was supposed to meet me for lunch at the Golden Spoon, our usual spot. I arrived early, excited to see her. 1 hour passed, then 2. My phone was silent. I called her. No answer. I texted, a flurry of messages, one after another. "Mutya, are you okay? Where are you?" Still nothing. My stomach coiled into a cold, hard knot. But these restaurants started to feel too bright, too loud. People stared. I kept checking my phone, my thumb hovering over her name. Panic began to claw at my throat. My heart pounded with a sickening realization. This wasn't just late. This was wrong. My mind raced, trying to find an explanation, any explanation, that wasn't the one screaming in my gut. She had to be okay. She had to, right? My world, so recently brightened, now felt like it was plunging into a deep, cold darkness. She was gone. And my money? It was gone with her. I walked around like a ghost for days. My phone was a useless brick in my hand. I kept telling myself she'd call, she'd explain, maybe there was an emergency. My mind clung to any excuse, any hope, but deep down a cold dread was setting in. I found myself back at the Sunset Dive that evening, the same bar where I'd first seen her. The music felt like a mockery, every laugh a jab. I just sat there nursing a beer, staring into the frothy head. Then, a voice. "Rough night, buddy." It was Dave, an older expat I'd seen around. He'd sat down next to me, his eyes kind. He'd seen plenty of us old guys come and go. I just nodded, barely able to speak. "Girl troubles," he prodded gently. I finally spilled it, the whole story, words tumbling out like rocks from a landslide. My voice was hoarse. Dave listened, his face grim. When I finished, he just shook his head slowly. "What did she say her brother's name was?" he asked, his voice flat. I told him. Dave pulled out his phone, his thumb switching. It was Mutya, laughing. Her arm was wrapped around a younger man, his face beaming. My breath hitched. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. "This is her husband," Dave said, his finger tapping. "The screen. He's been living in Manila. They've been married for years." My world didn't just tilt. It shattered. The room spun. The beer in my hand suddenly felt like poison. Her husband. Married. All the pieces slammed into place, one after another, each one a hammer blow to my chest. The fishing boat, the sick sister, the broken roof. Every single story, every tender word, every... "His name," Dave continued, oblivious to my internal collapse, "is the same name you gave me. The brother who needed the fishing boat. The air left my lungs. The man in the picture was the phantom brother. It was a betrayal so complete, so cold. I couldn't even process it. My mind replayed every sweet glance, every intimate moment, and they twisted into something grotesque. She had played me for a fool, a complete, utter fool. And I had fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. My hands trembled. I just stared at the picture, at her smiling face, a stranger's smile. My trust, my hope, my future, all dissolved into nothing. The bitter taste of deception filled my mouth. I locked myself in my apartment for days after that. The curtains were drawn, plunging the room into a perpetual twilight. My phone was dead, thrown into a drawer. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I couldn't. Every single object in that apartment, every cheap souvenir, every piece of furniture I'd picked out with her, screamed of her deception. I stared at the walls, at the empty space where her picture used to hang. My mind just kept replaying the image on Dave's phone. Mutya, laughing, with her husband. I felt like a fool, a pathetic, vulnerable old man who had fallen for the oldest trick in the book. All those years back in LA, thinking I was so smart, so worldly, it was a joke. My dreams of a peaceful retirement, of a second chance at love, lay shattered. They weren't just broken, they were pulverized. This shame was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I thought about my kids, how they'd warned me, how I'd dismissed their concerns. What would they say if they knew? If they knew I'd lost most of my savings to a con artist? The thought made my stomach clench. The isolation was crushing. I didn't leave the apartment. Food tasted like ash. Sleep offered no escape, only restless nightmares of her smiling face, morphing into a stranger's. I walked from room to room, the silence amplified by my own despair. I'd left everything for this. For nothing. I saw the cheap bar stools I'd bought for us, the little dining table where we... Every object was a monument to my stupidity, my blindness. I had been so desperate for connection, so hungry for someone to care, that I had willingly ignored every single red flag. Every inconsistency, my need for her affection, had turned me into a mark. I was living in a cage of my own making, surrounded by the wreckage of my foolish heart. The realization was cold, sharp, and unavoidable. My life, my entire retirement plan, had become a desolate wasteland. I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. Just the echoing emptiness of a dream that never was. After a week of living like a ghost, the emptiness became too much. I couldn't just vanish, not without one last attempt. Not for her, but for me. I needed to say something, anything, to break the suffocating silence. My fingers trembled as I picked up my phone, the screen still dark from days of neglect. I charged it, the battery bar slowly filling, a small, unwelcome symbol of returning to the world. I found her contact, Mutya. Her name felt foreign, alien, on the screen. I opened the message app. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, pain, and a strange lingering sadness. I didn't beg. I didn't threaten. There was no point. The truth was already screaming in my head. I started typing, slowly at first, then with a quiet fury. I know, I wrote. Just 2 words, but they felt like a confession of my own foolishness. I know about him. About everything. My thumb hovered over the send button. My heart ached with a dull, persistent pain. I remembered her laugh, the way she'd look at me, and a fresh wave of betrayal washed over me. All those memories, tinted. I typed more. I loved you, Mutya. I truly did. I trusted you with everything. The words felt heavy, each one a stone sinking into the pit of my stomach. And you took it all. Not just... I paused, staring at the screen. What more could I say? What more was there? I typed one last sentence. I hope you are happy with what you did. It wasn't a curse. It wasn't a wish for revenge. It was just an acknowledgement. A cold, quiet statement of finality. I pressed send. The message disappeared from my screen, sent into the digital void. I watched my phone. Hour after hour, the screen stayed dark. No typing, notification, no new message alert, no flicker of regret, no explanation, nothing. The silence was deafening, heavier than any argument, colder than any insult. It was the quietest, most brutal goodbye. My phone, once filled with her sweet words, her daily messages, was now just a cold black rectangle in my hand. Empty, just like my apartment, just like my heart. She had truly vanished, and she had taken everything with her. I finally looked at myself in the mirror, not just my reflection, not the haggard face staring back, but truly looked at who I had become. The apartment was still dark, but I pulled back the curtains, letting the harsh Angeles city light stream in. It wasn't just Mutia's fault, I realized. The thought hit me like a physical blow, a different kind of pain, sharper than the betrayal. My loneliness, my desperate need to be loved, my escape from that empty life back in Los Angeles, those were the cracks. She hadn't created them, she had just exploited them. I saw the reflection of a man who had wanted so badly to believe in a fairy tale that he had ignored every single red flag. I had chosen to be blind. That realization, quiet and devastating, was also a sort of freedom. The blame wasn't entirely on her anymore. It was on me too. My own need, my own vulnerabilities, my own eagerness to be rescued. I had handed her the tools, practically begged her to use them. My eyes scanned the room, landing on the few things I still had. The cheap coffee maker, the half-empty bottle of rum. These were my companions now. I thought about the money. Gone. But what hurt more was the feeling of being utterly used, of my deepest desires being turned into a weapon against me. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a man who had chosen to be blind, a man who had chased a fantasy instead of fantasy instead. This wasn't dramatic. There were no tears, no yelling. Just a quiet, cold truth settling in. I saw the truth not just about her, but about me. My need to feel needed had been a gaping hole she'd filled, temporarily. And when the illusion shattered, it wasn't just Mutia who vanished. A part of me, the naive, desperate part, vanished too. The anger at her still simmered, but it was mixed with a bitter self-awareness. I had created my own cage, and she had just closed the door. This was my mess, my fault. And in that raw, honest moment, facing myself in the mirror, I finally began to see the way out. My heart ached, but it also felt oddly clearer. I packed my bags, not with anger this time, but with a quiet sense of resolve. The apartment, once a symbol of my new beginning, now just felt like a monument to my mistakes. My passport, my remaining cash. A few clothes, that was all I really needed. The Philippines, once my dream, now felt like a painful, vivid memory I needed to escape. I didn't seek revenge. There was no point, no justice to be had. The truth, my own bitter understanding, was enough. I'd booked a flight, not back to Los Angeles, not yet. I couldn't face that. I chose somewhere new, a place I'd never considered before, somewhere quiet, far from the echoes of Mutia's laughter and the sting of her betrayal. I just needed to be somewhere I could heal, somewhere I could simply be, without the ghost of a false promise hanging over me. My heart still felt bruised, raw, like a wound that hadn't quite closed, but it wasn't broken anymore. It was just different, harder maybe, but also strangely clearer. The blinding desire, the desperate need for connection that had led me here, it was gone, replaced by a cold, quiet strength. I had learned a hard lesson, the hardest of my life, but I had learned it. I took one last look around the empty apartment. The sunlight, harsh and unforgiving, streamed through the windows. No more lingering, no more self-pity. My taxi was waiting. As I stepped out into the humid air, the noise of Angeles City felt different. Not inviting, not exciting, just... This wasn't a happy ending, not in the traditional sense, but it was an ending, and a new, uncertain beginning.